Okay, we'll go ahead and get started this morning. Hopefully Lauren will be with us in just a few moments. She's having a rough morning like I was, but we're getting it together here. So thanks to those who were able to join us. I know that most of our mentors are off contract for summer or close to being off contract for summer. But I always like to end the school year with a webinar. And Lauren had originally been scheduled for this spring, but due to schedule conflicts had to be rescheduled. So we're so thankful that Lauren was able to make time for us in June. Okay, so this morning we will have an extended mindfulness moment, which I will be sharing with you. We're going to do some pinwheel breathing. And then after the mindfulness, we will be learning from Lauren how to help youth recognize unhealthy relationships. So I'm going to share a cute little video clip that I found on YouTube this morning from Gabriella Jones. I think she does a mindfulness activity on YouTube every morning, but this particular one was breathing with a pinwheel. And I just thought it was fun and would be a great share with our elementary kids. And let's watch the video. Here we go. Let's see if we can make it cooperate. Bear with me. All right, I think we're going. Of course, when I tested this morning, there was no problems. But now that we're trying to do it live, it's given me.
Good morning, students. So today for our mindful morning, we are going to do pinwheel breathing. And for those of you who do not know what that is, this is a pinwheel. So the purpose of this exercise is to help us see how different ways of breathing can affect our mind and our bodies and help us see how it feels. So I'm going to go through the different steps of how to do this. And if you have a pinwheel, you can get one. If you don't, I am going to send instructions about how to make one to your teacher or your family member, whoever you're with at the moment. So the first step that you're going to do is sit with your back straight and your body relaxed. Okay, are you doing that? Good. The second step is you're going to blow on your pinwheel using long, deep breaths. And then after that, we're going to notice how we feel. So here we go. Okay, I'm going to do it one more time. It's pretty cool. So after doing that, do you feel calm and relaxed? Is it easy for you to sit still or is it hard? Okay. The third step, we are going to do short, quick breaths. Okay, so we're going to do this. It's kind of hard. So how does your body feel now after doing that? And my heart is kind of racing a little bit and my breath is kind of short and kind of quick. So do you feel the same way that you felt before after we were doing that long, deep breaths? I don't. Okay, so our fourth step, we are going to blow on the pinwheel normally. So how you normally breathe. How does this way feel? Okay, so after doing those 3 different ways, which way did you like the best? How did it feel? For me, I like the long, deep breaths because I was able to just get in all that air and just blow out the bad air. So if something bad or ugly or angry or whatever was going on in my mind, I was able to just suck all of it in, get it in my body, and then just push it out, push it away from me. So that's what I liked about the first one. What about you guys? So, as I said before, I will send you the instructions for how to make a pinwheel if you don't have one. But until tomorrow, I will see you again for the next Mindful Morning. Bye, guys.
Like I said, I just thought that was a cute video that perhaps mentors and advocates could use with some of the elementary age students who perhaps could benefit from some mindfulness breathing practice. I really like how she compared the differences in the long breathing versus the short breathing and the normal breathing. Using the pinwheel myself made me realize how shallow my normal breaths are. So I obviously need to work on my mindful breathing. On the screen now are some resources I found in a quick Google search. There's a couple different videos, as well as some templates that you can print out and use to create pinwheels with your kids. I picked up mine at the dollar store just the other day because the dollar store is my favorite treasure hunt. Okay, so thank you for joining me this morning for that mindfulness moment. We'll go ahead and move on here. We'll introduce Lauren. Lauren is a prevention specialist with the Family and Support Treatment Center in Utah Valley. She recently graduated from Utah Valley University in behavioral science with an emphasis in family studies. Lauren is a licensed family life educator and is certified in trauma and crisis response. Lauren believes that many of the issues families and individuals face today can be improved and, more importantly, prevented by education on how to develop healthy relationships. She is passionate about creating happy, healthy families and excited to have her own someday. Thank you for joining us, Lauren. It looks like you are on the participant list, so I will stop sharing and let you take over the screen when you're ready.
Okay, thank you. Let me just share that really quick. Let's see. Okay. Okay, can everyone see the dating violence?
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna hit start. There we go.
Perfect.
Okay, so yeah, thank you guys for having me. Like she said, I travel around and I teach. Now that school is out, my schedule is a lot more flexible. So I'm teaching more communities, more church groups, youth groups, things like that versus school. So summer is kind of fun for me. But the most requested topic of any of the like 10 or 12 topics I teach is dating violence. And when I first got this job 3 years ago, I was informed that Utah has a really high teen suicide rate, and probably what I would be teaching the most and dealing with student reports the most would be with depression and suicide prevention, with that lesson that I teach. And I was very surprised my first year of teaching that more than any other topic, dating violence had the most students come up to me afterwards and say, hey, this is something I struggle with, I need help. And another surprising thing, and this is where my bias kind of comes in, but I would say probably, and this is my estimate, this isn't an exact number, but I would guess like 70 to 80% of the kids coming up and asking for help were boys. And in my biased brain, I had assumed, this is a girl problem. This is like, some boyfriend beating up on his girlfriend, and this is more of a female issue. But I have been, surprised. Sadly, I should have learned this earlier, that this is definitely a problem that affects people regardless of gender or sex or age. Sadly, this is a problem that's really vast. So the 4 types of dating violence that we're going to talk about today are emotional, sexual, digital, and physical. Emotional is by far the most common form of dating violence or unhealthy relationships. Emotional abuse is everywhere. And what's really sad is it's the most common and yet the least reported. So I kind of want to start a little discussion If we could have each person listening, just kind of, give a little comment, give a little thought. Why do you think emotional abuse is the most common and yet the least reported? So that's kind of the question I want to have a little discussion about. Why do you think emotional abuse is the most common and yet the least reported?
We've got a small group today, so you guys are welcome to unmute or pop those comments in the chat. I'll be brave. And
Thank you.
I think it's probably the most common because it's like the least obvious. It's something that is kind of like what do you call it, passive or whatever. And then as far as least reported, I think that's just because that's something we don't talk about. We don't talk about it being a form of abuse, or at least in my growing up years, that wasn't something we talked about.
Yeah, same. I completely agree. Someone in the comment section also said there are generally no physical signs, which is 100% true. Usually there's no physical signs. Let me check the other chat box. I'll just read it word for word. Some people don't want to admit they are weak. Most common because it isn't understood by people, and least reported because it is not looked at as abuse. I completely agree. Thank you guys for sharing. I know it's early in the morning, but I appreciate your insights. I don't know the correct answer if there is one, but I agree with everything said. Sadly, I think emotional abuse is so common. We see it in movies, we experience it in families, that we hardly recognize it as abuse unless it's, really bad. And hopefully our culture will change, and that's why I teach this lesson. But yeah, emotional abuse is the most common form of abuse. What a very common example of emotional abuse that is reported to me. Last week of school, I had a senior at a school here in Utah come up and let me know that he was going to be leaving the state. He had like an LDS mission planned. He was then planning on coming back and going to college at a different city. And his girlfriend was telling him that, if she left him, she would commit suicide. And that would be one severe example of emotional abuse, and sadly, one of the most common that is reported to me. One partner or even just a friend saying, I'm suicidal, or I'm experiencing severe depression and I'm going to self-harm, and kind of using that as leverage over the other person's head. And so that would be one example of emotional abuse that's kind of skyrocketing right now, sadly. And we'll go into that a little bit more. The next most common is digital. I mixed them up on my slides, so I apologize. But digital abuse is the next most common because you can emotionally and sexually abuse someone through technology. Then we have sexual abuse, which would be touching someone anywhere a swimsuit covers, taking pictures or videos anywhere of someone anywhere a swimsuit covers, or someone touching you where a swimsuit covers without consent. And then last, we have physical, and though it is the least common, it is still much more common than we would like. So we are going to focus on emotional abuse first. I'm going to skip those. So as I'm reading these, I hope you can identify if your mentees, I don't know, the full situation of the awesome work that you guys do, but in recognizing some of these signs of emotional abuse as you're talking with your mentees and listening to them, if you start to notice some of these signs, or they kind of talk about some of these things, this might be a good indicator that they may be experiencing some form of emotional abuse. So the first one, emotional abuse, is someone who is extremely controlling of them. Micromanaging most of their decisions. Now, sometimes this is needed with parents, but with dating, you don't want to date someone who's parenting you. And so dating, if someone's controlling how often they're on their phone, when they should be texting or calling, who they can be friends with. I had a girl, oh my gosh, come up to me after I was teaching and said, I don't like it when my boyfriend follows other girls on Instagram. So I made him unfollow all other females on Instagram and delete all other phone contacts that are female, unless they're like family. So like mom, sister, grandma. Other than that, he couldn't have any like female phone contacts, period. And that would be an example of emotional abuse. Very, very controlling. So that's something you can be looking out for. Also, I wanted to say, if you have questions or comments, feel free to stop me at any time. Jealousy that leads to being controlling, pretty similar to what I just said. Isolation. The biggest red flag that I can teach to any form of abuse is isolation. Isolation and abuse are best friends. I've been working with abuse cases for 3 years, so I teach about abuse, and then my second job is I'm a rape crisis responder. So if there is any rape or sexual assault in Utah County, I go to the emergency room and I help the victims with the rape kit and the recovery process with law enforcement and the forensic nurses. I've been doing that for 3 years as well. And in doing both of these jobs, working with every form of abuse you can imagine, I have never responded to an abuse case that did not include isolation. And the reasoning is abusers want you to either be alone or feel alone. One or the other 100% of the time. So physical isolation would be you are always alone with them. Maybe you can't leave the house. Maybe they lock the car so you can't get out until they're done talking with you. Maybe they don't like you hanging out with your friends, or they want you to be with them instead of visiting your family. Emotional isolation is a lot more common and sadly a lot harder to spot. Emotional isolation is when they want you to feel alone, because when you feel alone, when you feel like no one will believe you, no one will help you, when you feel like you're the problem, not them, when you feel like this is normal, this is just, how they show me they love me, then you don't tell and they get away with it. And so sadly, emotional isolation is a lot of mind games, a lot of manipulation, and the abuser gets away with it because the victim isn't telling, isn't reporting. So I wanted to go over some of the warning signs that emotional isolation is occurring. We talked about physical isolation, but with emotional isolation, any partner saying things like, your friends are so dumb, they're so immature, why do you hang out with them? I really don't like your friends. In fact, when you hang out with them, I'm not going to hang out with you. And so maybe you notice your mentee or your friend or someone that you know kind of hanging out with their friends less. And then their partner says, your family hates me. I could never be good enough for your family. I just know your mom and dad hate me. I'll never be good enough. And so the victim stops including their family now too, because their partner's uncomfortable with their family and friends. And so their family becomes more distant. And what's happening is the abuser is planting seeds of doubt in all of the victim's outside relationships, making everyone else distant from the victim except for them. And when the victim only has their partner left to turn to and to depend on, that's when they're effectively emotionally isolated, and the abuser has the control in the relationship. And so that would be, some things to watch out for emotional isolation. Recognizing that can prevent not all, but I would say most other future abuse cases. So, questions or comments so far? Okay. Threats and manipulation. So your partner hasn't hurt you, but you're terrified of them. Using fear, guilt, insults, put downs, excessive sarcasm, or teasing. Sometimes we have senses of humor that are kind of funny like that, and that's not abuse, but they can be taken too far. So, for example, sarcasm is not necessarily abusive. It can definitely be funny, and people can even bond over it. But sarcasm is a Latin word. So, where it comes from in Latin, sar means flesh, and chasm means cut. So, the base root of where this word comes from is it means to cut flesh. And so, I want to talk about how sarcasm is used to cut at someone abusively versus when it's not. So, when sarcasm is abusive, it would be when you're cutting at someone with your words in a way that you can easily get away with it and make them think it's their fault. So, for example, if someone walks in the room and I say, "Wow, you're looking real nice today," and I like sarcastically just told them they look ugly without even saying the words, right? I'm like, "You look great today." Now that person says, "Hey, that was rude." A sarcastic, abusive response would be, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, I was kidding. I said you look nice today. Geez, lighten up." Or, "It was a joke. It's funny. Wow, you're sensitive. You have issues." And you can see how I just flipped it on them. They're the one with the problem, not me. If you've ever heard of gaslighting, that was just it in action. And that would be an abusive use of sarcasm. A healthy response is, "Okay, I'm sorry. It was a joke. I won't do it again." You acknowledge, "Okay, I was rude. I'm sorry you were offended. I take responsibility." An unhealthy response is, "You're the one with the problem. You need to stop being dramatic and sensitive." And then last, we have rigid expectations. That would be, you can't be friends with any other guys. I don't like it when you have other guy friends or other girlfriends, or you need to answer all my texts within 5 minutes, or something like that. Again, if you feel like your mentee or someone you know is dating someone who's parenting them, that would not be healthy. That could be rigid expectations. It can be money wise, it can be emotionally, it can be time, it can be physically, but rigid expectations that are not mutually decided on are emotional abuse. So before we move on from emotional abuse, does anyone have questions or comments? Again, I want to make sure everyone gets a chance to share if anything's on your mind.
I was just going to share, and of course everybody else is welcome to do so. This was my huge aha in life. Unfortunately, my first boyfriend was an emotional abuser, and it took multiple adults in my life to make me realize that it was the case it was. He tried to keep me from going to family events, as well as friend activities. We didn't have as many, like we didn't have smartphones then, so that wasn't as much of an issue, but he did completely like monopolize my time and was just, like you said it earlier, where he would like guilt me into not leaving him, and he would use things against me like his own self-harm so that I would stay with him. And it took 4 years, and it really took, like I said, multiple adults talking to me, but I just am thankful because it was, of course, my parents were very aware of what was going on, but they involved other adults in the conversation. And I think for me, that was one of the things that made a big difference. And one of the reasons that we're having Lauren present to us today, because I didn't realize until it was over that it was actually abuse.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for sharing. It's like, wow, this happens to everyone. Sometimes we think, oh, this wouldn't happen to me, but it is actually so much more common. And interesting, that you said, it took a while for you to even recognize that it was abuse. And so thank you for sharing. And I think as mentors, that's why knowing this is going to be really helpful, because maybe the youth that you're working with, just like Amanda said, might not even recognize that it's abuse, and it might take someone they look up to and other adults to be able to help and inform them to really get them to, get out of that relationship. So thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
Anyone else before we move on to sexual abuse?
wanted to mention that I think sometimes these behaviors happen among friends as well, and not just necessarily significant others. I have a 12-year-old daughter, and I see these kinds of things happening sometimes with her friends, and we constantly have to talk about what is okay and what isn't okay, as far as treating people one way versus receiving this type of, I guess, I don't, whatever, just like people treating her that way. And so I think that's important, especially with this age range, is that you treat or you teach healthy behaviors and healthy ways of having friendships in addition to having significant relationships.
Yeah, and that just breaks my heart that at 12, that starts, and I'm sure even younger. But yeah,
and I want to say, I don't know that people recognize they're doing it, right? So
yeah,
in her instance, I don't know that her friend is recognizing that she's being controlling, or recognizing that she's using guilt to get my daughter's attention or something along those lines. So you have to point that out. Or if my daughter's doing the same thing, right? To me, for example, I think sometimes these types of behaviors just happen, and you have to tweak that and guide that.
Yep, I will say most situations I work with, abuse situations I work with, the abuser does not consider themselves an abuser. Now, I'm sure we've all had unhealthy behavior, and especially as we're learning and growing, we learn, wow, that's not a healthy way for me to get what I want. So I'm really glad that you brought that up. And I think that's why educating this is so important, even for students to be like, oh my gosh, I've been the problem, but also I feel like my aim for this lesson is to kind of help us identify those abusers who their intent is to control. Their intent is to make you self-doubt and isolate you. Whereas sometimes with friends and with your daughter, and even I'm sure I've done some of these, our intent isn't to, completely isolate and control this person. It's just an unhealthy behavior we've learned to get what we want. And so, as I've been teaching this, it's really helped me recognize, oh, growing up, that was super unhealthy that I did that, And so I'm really glad you brought that up. This does happen with friends. And a lot of these kids doing these behaviors don't recognize that it is unhealthy. Thus is the importance of educating on it. So thank you. Your daughter is lucky to have you. Okay, so sexual abuse. Sexual abuse is any touch without consent. Now, this can also be verbal, so not just physical. If someone is yelling gross, inappropriate things about you, if someone is spreading rumors about really personal issues about you, that could be considered sexual verbal harassment. But really sexual abuse, the kind of what I really want to focus on is any unwanted touch, any touch without consent. Honestly, with how broad and seriously this is taken today, this could be if somebody touches your arm and you say stop and they don't. Nowadays, you can get in trouble for sexual harassment if you're just touching someone anywhere and they don't want you to. Most often I see that in the workplace. Some boss or someone at work will not stop touching their employees after they've been repeatedly asked to stop. Rape is sex without consent. This can be done to someone using a body part. This can also be done to someone using an object. Sexual assault is unwanted touching under clothing, and sexual battery is unwanted touching over clothing. This is what we use in law enforcement to determine what happened, how to help you, and what charges need to be put in place. Now, sexual assault is kind of used as a blanket term of one of these happened to me, but I don't want to get more specific. So a lot of times you'll hear people say, I'm a victim of sexual assault, and that can mean several different things. We just kind of understand that, they were violated in some way, and if they want to be more specific with you, they will. But just know that sometimes sexual assault is used as a blanket term like that. So, I don't know if you are ever going to be having the consent talk with your mentees. So I don't know if this is going to be helpful. I won't spend a ton of time on this, but if you are ever in a situation where you are teaching someone about consent, just understand, and I'm sure you guys all know about this. Sadly, I wish more people knew what consent is. I wish so many more people understood it, because it's kind of common sense, but basically it's both partners are on the same page. It takes 2 seconds to make sure your partner's comfortable. Are you comfortable? Is this okay? What is not consent is saying nothing. If someone does not respond, that means no. Saying yes or nothing while someone is under an influence, whether that influence is drugs, alcohol, sleep, medications. If someone is not in their right mind, we can make helpful decisions like, oh, I'm going to get them home and into bed safe, but we don't ever have the right to make anyone's sexual decisions for them, ever, especially when they're kind of out of it. And then lastly, saying yes or giving permission because you're being pressured or pestered or convinced is not consent. You shouldn't have to force or convince someone to say yes. Saying yes because you're scared of what will happen if you say no, or because you owe them or feel like you owe them, saying yes for any of those reasons is not consent. So the laws of consent change pretty frequently, sadly. Currently, as far as I've been educated on, the age of consent for Utah is 16. So a 16-year-old can make their own sexual decisions with someone up to the age of 17. 18 and older would be illegal. But someone 15 and younger, no matter what they say or do, they cannot give consent. So even if they're completely fine with having sexual behavior with another person, that would not be considered consent, because at 15, you're considered a child who cannot make sexual decisions in the state of Utah. Most other states, it's 18, but Utah's a little bit younger because we have a high teen pregnancy rate, and Utah didn't want to prosecute, 16-year-olds that were getting pregnant and messing around. So date rape, sadly, 90% of rape in Utah, 90% of it is connected with drugs and alcohol. So this is a really, really big issue. Teach your mentees that when they're dating to use the buddy system, make sure that they have some sort of buddy system. It can work however they want it to. I will share one experience of a girl who her use of the buddy system saved her life. And I share this because I think this story can actually be a great prevention tool. So I responded to a rape or a sexual assault, an attempted rape, a few Octobers ago. And this girl had met some guy on the dating app called Mutual. And so she matched with this guy. He was a BYU student. He had just graduated. He was going to go into law school. They started chatting. He seemed cute and normal. And so they decided to go on a date. Now, whenever she goes on a date with people from apps she meets online, she has this whole buddy system to stay safe. So she texted her roommates in their group chat and said, hey, this is a screenshot of this guy's profile. I'm going on a date with him tomorrow night. Here's when I should be back. And then she told the guy she was going on a date with, hey, meet me at this location. And when they met at the location, it was a public bank in downtown Provo. And so she felt like, okay, public bank, downtown Provo, lots of people around. It's safe. He doesn't have to know where I live, and I can leave my car there safely. So they park at the bank, meet, get in his car, and go on the date. And he says, I'm so excited. We're going to drive up Provo Canyon and make s'mores. And she's like, awesome. Well, they start driving up the canyon, and they're passing all of the parks at Provo Canyon and the ones that had fire pits. And she was kind of like, hey, like, which park are we going to go make s'mores at? And he says, well, actually, there's this really pretty spot. It's super secret. Nobody knows about it. It's way up past Sundance in the Alpine Loop. I have everything set up and ready to go there. I just wanted to surprise you. She immediately has alarm bells going off because it's getting dark. She doesn't know him. And if she goes up to this secluded location in the Alpine Loop, she won't have cell reception. So she tells him, I'm so sorry. I want to make sure I have cell service. Could we do one of the parks instead, where there's lots of people around and fire pits and stuff? And he just would not take her seriously, kept turning it into a joke. So finally, as they start driving up towards Sundance, she gets so freaked out that she immediately pulls out her phone, and in her roommate group chat, she texts, I'm in the mood for pineapple smoothies. And I guess pineapple is like their roommate code word, their buddy system code word for, okay, I'm in a sketchy situation, I need an out. So one of her roommates sees that and immediately calls her and says, hey, it's an emergency, I need you to come back. Makes up some story about like she hurt her leg, broke her leg or something, and needs her to be taken to the hospital. So this roommate on the date says, oh my gosh, my roommate just broke her leg. We have to turn her on right now and end the date. I'm so sorry. I have to go help her. And this guy she's on the date with says, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Well, we already started driving up past Sundance, so I'll just take you back the long way through the Alpine Loop. And she says no, and they start arguing, and then the line goes dead because she loses service. And her roommates were looking at that phone thinking, okay, she said pineapple, so she's scared. They started arguing and the line went dead. Oh, and I also forgot to share that part of their buddy system is they shared their location with each other. So her roommates could see her location was still going up the canyon instead of coming back. And the cool thing about sharing your location is even if you lose service, you can still see someone's location because it's done through GPS, not cell reception. So that's kind of comforting to know. So her roommates decide, these 5 little 19-year-old girls, that they're going to pile in a car and go save the day instead of calling 911. It's like, oh, just call 911. But they decided they were going to drive up the canyon to her location on their phones and go save the day. And it actually ended up being a good thing because when they got up to her location in the Alpine Loop, they were driving slowly and they saw this car kind of tucked off in the trees, and they saw their roommate banging on the car window, screaming for her life. And luckily they laid on the horn. It scared this dude. He kicked their roommate out, and he took off up the canyon. And he, had attempted to sexually assault her, and they had come just in time. She had cuts and bruises from him on her. They rushed her to an emergency room. And when I got there with the forensic nurse, her roommates were frantic. They were like, we don't think his name on his profile is his actual name. We couldn't tell if his car was white or silver in the dark. We didn't get his license plate because he took off so quick. Like, this guy's going to get away with it. And their roommate, the victim, was so brilliant. She was like, you guys calm down. I had a whole buddy system. Before I even went on the date, I specifically had him meet me at a bank. And as you guys know, banks get robbed, so banks have security cameras everywhere. And so all the police had to do that night was rewind the bank security camera footage, and they were able to get this guy's car make and model, license plate, and what he looks like. And they caught him at a traffic light, and within like 4 or 5 hours later that night. He had raped 5 other BYU and UVU students just in that month of October. And this girl's use of the buddy system didn't just save her life, but think of how many girls she saved in the future from having some sort of buddy system as she's dating to stay safe. And so I always share that story because I'm like, we all need a buddy system, especially these kids who are dating, and there's so many people out there with bad intentions. So teach people as they're dating, whatever works for them, have some sort of buddy system, whether it's sharing your location, having a group chat, I don't know what, but please, please, please teach everyone to have a buddy system as they date. So questions, comments so far?
Okay. Lauren, before you go on, sorry to be the one that keeps chiming in.
You're fine. No, please comment.
So kind of to add on to what Julia said about friends can be emotional abusers, I think the buddy system, expand that to adults. I have an adult, a divorced woman, and she's dating again. And so even though we're not roommates and that kind of stuff, we still do we have a buddy system for her, the same thing. I can see she'll send me their profiles and she'll tell me when and where. And she texts it like when she's leaving, and I check in on her throughout the day. And then she tells me when she gets home. So I would just add that, this can even affect your adult kids or your friends, your family, like not just our mentees.
Oh, 100%. Yes. I love that. I'm like, we all should, regardless of age. So thank you. Okay, so digital dating violence, this is skyrocketing right now. So this would be someone manipulating another person in a way that causes them harm through any form of technology, through email, through text, through phone call, through social media, the list goes on. When I am working with sexual assault of anyone 18 and younger, I swear it always has to do with Snapchat. Sometimes I'll see Instagram, I've seen TikTok, I've seen Discord, I've seen YouTube, I've seen Facebook, but most of the time Snapchat followed by Instagram. And again, it's not always the person they're dating. Sometimes it's a stranger that they're flirting with, or even just friends. But sadly, this type of abuse is skyrocketing right now. So with with digital dating violence, one of the scary things is with individuals who abuse over technology, there has been a lot of research done. What a lot of these researchers did is several universities throughout the US went into prisons and they interviewed inmates who were in jail or who were in prison for various abuse charges. And they interviewed these inmates and said, okay, we want to understand, how did you end up here? How did this whole thing start for you? And they tried to get these inmates to pinpoint when in their life they personally started abusing other people. And almost every single one of these inmates in prisons across the US identified, I think I first started becoming an abusive person to other people years ago online. Started online first. I started scamming people. I started getting into pornography. I started catfishing people to the extreme online, whatever it was. It started with sketchy online behavior and it slowly escalated until online wasn't enough anymore. Online wasn't satisfying. And that's what led to in-person, and it continued to escalate until years later, now they're in prison for abuse that got that severe. So I kind of wanted to start another discussion. I would appreciate it if you guys could message in the chat or just share verbally, because I don't even know the answer. But why do you think so many abusers start online first and then work their way up to abusing people in person? Why do you think it starts online?
Lauren?
Yeah.
I think it has a lot to do with anonymity. It's like there are things I do when I'm driving a car that I would never do in a grocery line. You know what I mean?
Amen to that.
And I think because they can't see me. And I think there's something about that anonymity that allows us to let the dark side of us come out, where in other situations we would check that. And then I think at that point, it becomes habitual. Then it becomes, you get that little dopamine hit when you feel so powerful. And so it grows off of that. But I think, like you pointed out, it's an awful breeding ground.
You're right. Anonymity. I can't say that word. I apologize. Definitely. Ooh, kind of gives me the chills. Easier to fake a different personality. Thank you for sharing. Safe place to experiment. Oh, that makes me want to vomit. Very true. It's convenient. Everyone's online. It's easy to find people. Yeah, thank you for sharing these in the group chat. I will share one experience I had September of this past school year. I was teaching at Orem Junior High School to their Hope Squad. And I was teaching a lesson similar called Technology and the Adolescent Brain, and it talks a lot about this. And after I was teaching their Hope Squad, one of the girls came up to me and said, I'm really worried. I just heard this lesson, and my best friend met this guy on Snapchat. He goes to Mountain View High School. He's 15. He's just 1 year older than us. And at first, when they started talking on Snapchat, it was really cute and they started dating. But then I started noticing some of those warning signs you talked about. She started becoming distant and not telling people about him. And I just got really worried. And I'm really scared now because she actually skipped Hope Squad today to walk to the Sonic in Orem and meet him face to face in person for the first time. So I'm like, oh my goodness, thank you so much for telling me this. I'm just gonna go to the front office and, get some help, let her parents know, where she is. And because I work in law enforcement, I texted one of the undercover cops that I know in Orem, who I work with frequently, and just asked him, hey, this student that at this school might be completely fine, but could you just park your car next to the Sonic in Orem and just watch, make sure she's okay while I go talk to the school and her parents. And wow, I still get the chills telling this story. This 15-year-old girl or 14-year-old girl sits down at Sonic, starts texting someone, and guess who else shows up? Not a 15-year-old boy from Mountain View High School, a 65, 66 something year old dude who for months had been pretending to be this 15-year-old boy from Mountain View High School. He was from Illinois. He drove across the country for this meeting. And what's even worse is this 15-year-old boy from Mountain View High School is a real kid. He exists. All this predator did was randomly find his Snapchat and Instagram and Facebook and screenshot all his pictures, screen record all his videos, and repost them to accounts with almost the same username. So when this girl started talking with him, telling her friends, oh, look how cute he is, I'm talking with him. Some of her friends were like, oh, I know him. He's in my stake. He plays soccer with my brother. He's so cute. Yeah, I know he goes to the high school. He's so nice. And so obviously this girl felt safe meeting up with him in person because some of her friends, knew him. And in reality, it was just a really grossly creative predator who was able to take advantage of someone's vulnerability online. And so when you're working with youth, one of the best prevention tools is not just the buddy system of adults and friends. I'm so glad that she, at least had some people who knew about it, but also just to teach people never meet up with individuals you're talking to online. I just teach them, you've been taught stranger danger, right? You wouldn't talk to a stranger in Walmart who wants you to meet up with them. And if you wouldn't do that in person, why would you do that online? And so obviously it gets a little bit different when you're 18 and older using dating apps. But, with youth and hopefully with the mentees that you're working with, I would just say, if someone ever wants you to meet up with them, talk to me, talk to an adult you trust. Stranger danger is real in person and online. So yeah, really sad. Again, watch out for Snapchat, watch out for Instagram, lots of predators online. And then again, this happens with friends being abusive online. This happens with people you're dating being abusive online. And so I know I've talked about strangers, but that whole emotional abuse part that I talked about in the first part of this lesson, that happens online every day from people you know and trust. And so, yeah. Questions, comments? I hope I'm not traumatizing everyone from dating. Be careful. Okay. Our last form of abuse is physical, and this would be non-accidental injury. My lesson specifically geared towards dating. Again, this can happen in families, friends, but with dating, anyone who is pushing you, shoving you, yanking your hair, grabbing your wrist, grabbing your face, throwing things at you, scratching you, leaving welts, marks, burns, bruises, that would be physical abuse. Something that is important to teach our youth is this, and this is where I kind of get up on my soapbox, but I'll be watching TV shows, music videos, movies where two people are in love and then they get in this heated, passionate fight, and the girl will slap the dude across the face or start throwing dishes or shoes at him or start like punching or hitting his chest. And we watch it and it's chill. We're like, girl power, you show him, he deserved that. But if we watched a guy doing that to a girl, all of a sudden, like, he's going to prison. This is the worst thing ever. And so I think it's important to teach youth that regardless of gender identity, anything like that, hitting someone because you're mad at them is abuse. And even if you see when a girl slaps a guy in a movie and it's like empowering girl power, that's still abuse. That's not okay. The only exception is self-defense. And obviously that's if you or someone else's physical safety is in immediate harm. But if someone makes you mad, we don't hit them. We've been taught that since we were in kindergarten. Just because someone deserves to be hit doesn't mean you do it. We don't hit people just because we're mad. So I'm going to talk about this, and then I'm going to finish after this with just kind of focusing on some prevention, some further prevention. But I wanted to bring up, when you're working with youth, if you are working with a youth who they're in a relationship with a friend or someone they're dating and it is unhealthy, and you're like, come on, you deserve better, leave, and they don't leave. Understand that it is so hard to leave abusive relationships. And like Amanda, I'm so glad that you were vulnerable enough to share, that you were in a relationship for 4 years that was abusive. And this is kind of how I teach it. Imagine something that you love, okay? Maybe you love Chick-fil-A, maybe you love naps, maybe you love, I don't know, whatever it is you love, Netflix and chill. And then imagine me saying, no more, stop, not good for you. That would be really hard for any of us to just stop cold turkey, right? Like, no, I love Chick-fil-A. I don't care if it's not good for me. And repeatedly being told, hey, no more, this isn't good for you. You might know that, but it's still hard. And so apply that with someone, with a person that they love. It's very similar. It's hard. They might know it's unhealthy, but they love this person. There's memories and good times and history and feelings, emotions all wrapped up in it, and it's really hard. And so I teach this because when you are working with someone who is in a toxic relationship, leaving is usually a process rather than a once and done situation. I have seen it done where abuse happened and that person's out of there, but it's very rarely. Usually when I'm working with abuse, most of the time it's a process. And it's hard to be the person not in that relationship saying, leave, you deserve better. It is so hard. So if this person is in danger and you're worried for their safety, you are welcome to go behind their back and report it. You are welcome, and I'll give you lots of resources for reporting on my last slide here. But what I don't want to happen is to be kind of like bullying this victim face to face, saying, don't come crying to me when they abuse you, because I've told you a million times to leave. If you don't want me to help you, I won't. Stop complaining to me when they abuse you. It's that kind of bullying them to their face, trying to force them to leave, that can isolate them further. So always persuade, always try and talk them into leaving, but don't give them ultimatums, don't isolate them further. And then if you need to, go report it if it's a dangerous situation. So questions, comments? Okay. Teach with focusing on prevention. One of the best ways to prevent is just to exemplify, teach, give examples of what healthy relationships look like. So in your relationships with your mentees, give them respect. If they don't want to hug, don't hug them. If they don't want to talk about something, don't force them to talk about it. Trust them. If they say, something, have the courage to trust them. Communicate openly. be pretty upfront with your feelings. Don't play games where they have to feel like they have to guess what your meaning is. Be friends. Listen to their goals and their interests. Compromise. Teach them that these are the ways we should have healthy relationships. And most of all, I will share, there's a quote in a movie that I love called The Perks of Being a Wallflower. And you guys have probably all heard the quote, but it says, "We accept the love we think we deserve." And wow, is that not the most true quote I've ever heard? We accept the love we think we deserve. And so I think as mentors, you can help them learn the kind of love they deserve, that you can help them learn their worth. And you can be creative in how you do that. That's something that I'm not going to give you an easy answer of how to do that. But I think that can be a really, really helpful, empowering thing that you as mentors can do, is just to teach them their worth, teaching them what they deserve. If you need help reporting, so, I teach, get parents involved, get adults involved when I'm teaching this in schools. And I'm like, look, here's some adults you can get involved. And I hope you guys can be those adults for these mentees. Also, some other ways to report. Any local police department, just ask for the victim's advocate. The Utah Rape Crisis Line, they deal with any form of sexual abuse or physical abuse. So not just rape, but it can also be physical. The Center for Women and Children in Crisis is known as the Refuge now, or the Rape Recovery Center in Salt Lake County. That's who I work for. They're good for sexual abuse. And then loveisrespect.org. There's this anonymous texting tip line where you can report any form of abuse, but they're really, really good with helping with digital and emotional abuse, because a lot of times people are like, should I call the police because I'm in an emotionally abusive relationship? Should I call the police because I'm being bullied by my partner online? And using this text line is a great way to get help with emotional abuse and digital abuse. And then I need to add this on here, but using the Safe Utah app. I'm sure you guys have all heard of it. It's anonymous. You download the app, and there are professionals who can help via Messenger on the app for any form of abuse. Reporting, if you're like, what should I report? Or the victim saying, I don't know what to do. And then DCFS is always, that's what when I report what I do. So these are some great ways to report. So, okay, before I wrap up, do you guys have any questions for me at all? Any questions, any comments, anything on your mind? I'm gonna check the chat really quick. Okay, so I do have time to show the video. Sorry, Amanda, I just saw that. Also, did I hear someone who had a question?
Well, I was just thinking, one of the biggest challenges I think that we face is that so many of the kids that we work with see abuse as normal. That's how they've been raised. That's what they've seen modeled. So when we say, wow, that doesn't seem like a real healthy relationship, they're stunned, because to them, that is a healthy relationship. That's relationship means abuse to them. So it's just really challenging. I'm not really offering anything insightful here other than, wow, it's difficult for a lot of our kids.
No, I love that you're able to step in their shoes and see that. I know for me growing up, I wish I had this lesson when I was, in 8th, 9th, 10th grade, because same here, right? Like, oh, in my family, that's normal. When I watch a rom-com, they're just being overprotective. That's love. That's healthy. That's normal. And you're right. It does take being educated for a lot of these kids to recognize that's unhealthy. So, okay, I'm going to attempt to show a video really quick. And I'm so sorry I forgot to show that at the beginning. Thank you for reminding me, Amanda. I spilled soda all over myself today, and I think I was a little frazzled before I started the lesson. So let me find the video. Okay. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to try sharing this again. Oh boy. Could everyone just hear that music? No? Oh, dang it. Okay.
So on the share, there's usually a pop-up menu, and on the bottom of it is a little button you click to share your audio.
Oh, share. Wow, thank you for
Zoom
educating
had
me.
to add like extra little clicks. I'm not sure why. It was their idea.
Sweet. Okay, so usually when I start in schools, the junior high kids love these videos. So I hope you appreciate it as much as they do. But this is going to test your awareness. And I use this video as in it's hard to recognize something that you're not looking for. And I hope that throughout my lesson today, as I went into the details of all those types of abuse, that now you know what to look for in unhealthy relationships, that now you'll be able to recognize them and stop them. So here is our video.
Clearly, somebody in this room murdered Lord Smythe,
What do you call
who...
it? Video menu.
Sorry, say that again.
Do you have two screens?
No, I just have one.
So minimize your video menu.
Okay.
It's over the video or something. Because I'm
Is
just
that better?
it's still just showing your file folder. There's the words I'm looking for.
Oh, weird. Okay.
Yeah, the share is definitely interesting. Every time I share, it changes which of my screens, like what number they are. So
Okay. How about now?
let's see. That's perfect. There you go.
Yay. Okay, here we go.
Clearly, somebody in this room murdered Lord Smythe, who, at precisely 3:34 this afternoon, was brutally bludgeoned to death with a blunt instrument. I want each of you to tell me your whereabouts at precisely the time that this dastardly deed took place.
I was polishing the brass in the master bedroom.
I was buttering his lordship's scones below stairs, sir.
Why, I was planting my petunias in the potting shed.
Constable, arrest Lady Smythe.
But how did you know?
Madam, as any horticulturist will tell you, one does not plant petunias until May is out. Take her away.
That's right, madam.
It's just a matter of observation. The real question is, how observant were you?
Action.
Clearly, somebody in this room murdered Lord Smythe, who, at precisely 3:34 this afternoon, was brutally bludgeoned to death with a blunt instrument. I want each of you to tell me your whereabouts at precisely the time that this dastardly deed took place.
I was polishing the brass in the master bedroom.
I was buttering his lordship's scones below stairs, sir.
Why, I was planting my petunias in the potting shed.
Constable, arrest Lady Smythe.
So you can kind of see as I show that to students that I'm teaching, it's easy to miss something that you're not looking for. And if we don't know the signs of abuse, of unhealthy relationships, it's really easy to miss them ourselves or in those close to us, that they are in an unhealthy relationship. And so I know this is not a very fun lesson. I know it's kind of heavy, but I do hope that talking about a lot of these signs and types of abuse can help us prevent it in ourselves and in those that we work with, especially with your mentees. So thank you for letting me steal an hour of your time today. I think what you guys do is so amazing. So I'm your biggest fan. Yeah, and thank you so much for allowing me to present today.
Thank you, Lauren. I'm happy to have another fan of the mentors and an ally to help us help our kids better. If anybody's got any questions or comments, we do have time. This is one of the lighter agendas. So if there's anything you want, we've got time. Otherwise, I will. Oh, Anne already had to abandon us for a meeting, but I'll do what Anne loves and I'll let everybody out early. So
Yeah, does anyone have any questions? Any questions at all?
and what I was going to say too, Lauren, is you might get questions as the school year starts, because we're going to go ahead and post this recording. And the majority of the mentors are already out for summer. So these are the few folks who are either through June 30th or on like a 12-month contract, which is a lot less. One of the questions in the comment is, are there centers for men and boys for abuse?
Yes. So the agency that I work for this time last year was called the Center for Women and Children in Crisis. And they just changed their name to The Refuge to make it more inclusive, because we respond to so many male abuse cases. And so every single one of the resources that I listed will help regardless of gender or gender identity or anything like that. And so anywhere you can report a female abuse, you can report the male abuse as well, at least in those resources that I gave you. And I'm really glad that you asked that question, Heidi, because again, I told you I was biased in thinking this is like mainly a female problem, and it's definitely not. I'm unaware if there are any centers or resources that are solely for males to get help. So I can definitely research that. But I do know that there's several places for victims of any gender to get help. So thank you for asking. Any other questions? Thank you guys. You're so nice to me.
Are amazing people. That is one of the best parts about this group. Mentors are just good folks.
Yes, yes.
Thank you. I did get some private chats about how informative this was, and that they really appreciated the material. So like I said, you might get questions later as some folks watch the recording. And I really appreciate it. And I know it helps me, and I hope it helped all of our mentors as well. So thank you, Lauren.
Okay. Thanks for having me. If anyone needs anything, you are welcome to give them my email if they have questions, if they'd like a presentation, anything like that. So
Perfect.
thank
Okay.
you.
All
Okay,
right.
bye guys.
Thank you. I will get our PowerPoint back up for everybody. If you want to take the post-training survey, of course, I'll keep it in our, oops, get the chat out of the way. I will put it in our follow-up email. But here is the link to the post-training survey. And thank you so much for taking time out of your schedules to join me this morning. I appreciate all of you, and I look forward to our first webinar this fall. In the meantime, you're welcome to reach out to me on email or phone calls. I will be online throughout the summer. And thank you and have a great day.